From the wilderness of Kodiak Island, Alaska, this is Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier with your host, Robin Barefield. In a land full of peril and vicious animals, humans are the most dangerous predators of all.
If you want to murder someone, consider inviting them on a cruise. With little law enforcement oversight and a fear of negative publicity, cruise ship officials often prefer to look the other way and ignore unpleasantness on one of their vessels. Cruise ship officers have even been accused of covering up murder scenes or pretending missing passengers never existed. Welcome to Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier. I'm your host, Robin Barefield, and I'm broadcasting to you from the heart of the Kodiak National Wildlife Refuge on Kodiak Island in Alaska. Cruise ships play an essential role in the tourism industry in Alaska. Cruise ships boost the economy of a handful of port towns in the state, and overland excursion packages tied to the cruise lines provide money to many interior regions of Alaska. While cruise ships are not the best way to visit the state's wild, remote regions, they offer a comfortable, easy way to get a feel for the 49th state. Many people think cruise ships provide a much safer way to travel. But do they? When Kenneth and Christy Manzanares decided to celebrate their 18th wedding anniversary with a family cruise to Alaska, they probably looked forward to a relaxing week with their daughters and other family members. Instead, the trip ended in a bloody murder, and by the time the ordeal was over, their daughters had lost both of their parents. Many modern cruise ships carry 3,000 to 4,000 passengers, and when you board the vessel, you know nothing about most of your fellow travelers or the ship's crew. The cruise staff works hard to maintain the illusion of a safe onboard environment. Passengers who would never consider walking through city streets in the middle of the night think nothing of wandering the narrow corridors of a cruise ship at 3 a.m. Cruise ships offer a party atmosphere, and many travelers consume alcohol at an alarming rate, clouding their judgment and lowering their inhibitions. There is no doubt that some crimes will occur in such an environment. Still, in their effort to portray the perfect holiday, cruise officials often cover up petty misdemeanors, and sometimes even try to hide more serious offenses. Approximately 30 million people take cruise ship vacations each year, and over the past 20 years, around 400 have gone missing from ships. Sometimes people accidentally fall overboard. However, with the high railings on modern cruise ships, climbing up on the railing and jumping into the ocean takes effort. Alcohol or drugs usually are involved in such accidents. Others commit suicide by jumping from the ship. A few disappear while visiting a port. Then there are those incidents where foul play was almost certainly involved. In 2004, Marion Carver, an investment banker from Boston, booked a cruise to Alaska. She didn't inform her family of her travel plans when she boarded the celebrity cruise ship Mercury on August 27th for a week-long cruise to southeastern Alaska. 3 days into the voyage, Carver's cabin attendant, Domingo Montero, told his supervisor that he had not seen Carver in 2 days, and she hadn't used her cabin since the day after the cruise began. Montero feared Carver was no longer on the ship. Since meticulous records indicated Carver never disembarked at any of the ports of call, and the staff could not find her on the boat, they should have alerted authorities of her disappearance. Instead, however, Domingo's supervisor told him to say nothing and to continue putting fresh chocolates on Carver's pillow every night. At the end of the trip, The supervisor placed Carver's belongings in storage. No one from the ship notified Carver's family or the authorities. On September 7, 2004, when Marion Carver's family could not locate her, they reported her missing. After Marion's father, Kendall Carver, learned of her vacation plans, he called the cruise line. Cruise officials told Mr. Carver that Marion boarded the Mercury, but she disappeared, leaving her belongings in her room. According to a celebrity official, the company donated Marion's things, including her purse, to charity. Kendall Carver issued a subpoena to Celebrity Cruises' board of directors, demanding documents about Marion. He soon learned that the crew was aware of her disappearance. Domingo Montero said he tried to report her missing, but his boss told him to keep quiet and said he would take care of the issue. When Carver demanded the security tapes from the cruise ship, the company said they erased them every 12 days. Carver knew they normally erase the tapes every 30 days, and the recordings from his daughter's cruise should still be available. Was Marion Carver's fate recorded on the security tapes? And if so, why did the ship's staff erase the evidence? What happened to Marion Carver? In 2013, authorities found human remains on Mary Island in Canada. They believe the remains were those of Marion Carver. After his shocking experience with the cruise ship industry's lack of accountability, Kendall Carver helped form the International Cruise Victims Organization, or ICV, to help other cruise crime victims understand their rights and how to seek justice. The FBI is the lead agency for investigating incidents involving U.S. citizens on the high seas. However, the FBI usually won't look into onboard thefts of less than $10,000. The FBI does investigate more serious cruise ship crimes, but by the time the cruise authorities notify the FBI of a murder or a passenger disappearance, the ship's staff has often destroyed evidence and cleaned the crime scene, leaving little or no sign of the crime. In 2013, the Cruise Lines International Association developed a passenger's Bill of Rights to protect cruise passengers. The same year, the U.S. Congress passed the Cruise Ship Protection Act. This bill is supposed to allow for greater transparency when crimes are committed on cruise ships and provide more federal protection for passengers' rights. A heinous murder occurred on the Emerald Princess cruise ship on July 25, 2017, as the ship sailed near Juneau, Alaska. In this case, abundant evidence left no doubt about who had murdered Christy Manzanares. Kenneth and Christy Manzanares, both 39 years old, from St. George, Utah, decided to celebrate their 18th wedding anniversary with a family cruise to Alaska. Their 3 daughters, aged 13 to 22 years, and several members of Christy's family joined them on the cruise. According to relatives, Christy and Kenneth were high school sweethearts, and up until the fateful day of July 25, 2017, the couple displayed few signs of marital strife. Christy was a successful real estate agent in St. George, Utah. She worked for a company that handled sales for luxury properties. Kenneth had worked various jobs, including one as a bail bondsman. The family boarded the Emerald Princess in Seattle for an Alaska cruise on July 24, 2017. On July 25th, they enjoyed a fishing expedition while the ship was docked in Ketchikan. Other cruise ship passengers said the family seemed relaxed. They were smiling, laughing, and having a good time. When they returned to the ship, Kenneth reportedly began drinking heavily. That night at dinner, passengers noticed Kenneth acting out and misbehaving. After dinner, Kenneth, Christy, and 2 of their daughters returned to their cabin. Christy and Kenneth immediately began arguing about Kenneth's behavior at dinner. According to Kenneth, Christy said, "I'm done. We need to figure out a way to get you off the boat in Juneau. I knew you'd find a way to ruin this trip." Christy told her husband that she wanted a divorce. Kenneth told his daughters to leave the cabin. After they left, he locked the door. The daughters went next door to the adjoining room where other family members were staying. They listened as the argument between their parents escalated. They heard Christy scream and beg Kenneth to stop. The daughters tried to re-enter the room through the adjoining door, but their father had locked it. Kenneth yelled, "Don't come in here, I mean it." The girls raced to the balcony to see into their parents' room. They saw their father straddling their mother, punching her in the face. The youngest daughter ran from the room and screamed for help. A passenger whose room was across the hall from the Manzanares' cabin said one of the little girls from that room came running out calling for help and said that her parents were fighting. She sounded pretty desperate, and the crew came up as quickly as they could. A few moments later, Christy's father and her two brothers managed to get into the room, where they found Christy on the cabin floor, barely alive. "She would not stop laughing at me," Kenneth told his in-laws. He then began dragging Christy toward the railing, perhaps to throw her into the ocean. But one of Christy's brothers grabbed her ankles and pulled her back into the cabin. A few minutes later, at approximately 9 p.m., ship security and medical personnel arrived and attempted to perform life-saving procedures on Christy. Unfortunately, her wounds were too severe, and she died a short time later. Police arrested Kenneth Manzanares the following day, July 26, 2017, when the ship reached Juneau. The medical examiner determined that Christy was killed by blunt force trauma to the head and face. Let me take a short break to thank my listeners. Many of you have been listening to my podcast for several years, and others are new listeners. I appreciate you all, and I've created a video I think you might find interesting. The title of the video is Alaska's Serial Killers, Mass Murderers, and Spree Killers. You can find the link to the video in the show notes or search for it on YouTube. I've profiled murderers from the early 1900s to the present. If you watch it, please let me know what you think about it. I just posted the video, but it already needs to be updated. A few days ago, serial killer Joshua Wade was found dead in his prison cell. The story of Joshua Wade and his murders will be in the second volume of Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier. I am editing the book now, and I hope to have it available early next year. Again, thank you for listening. And if you want to support this podcast and unlock extra episodes, join the Last Frontier Club on Patreon. Since the murder occurred in U.S. territorial waters, the FBI took over the investigation. The FBI's Anchorage field office led the investigation and was assisted by the FBI Seattle and Salt Lake City field offices. In February 2020, Kenneth Manzanares pleaded guilty to the second-degree murder of his wife, Christy, in the U.S. territorial waters outside of southeast Alaska on July 25, 2017. Prosecutors sought a life sentence for Manzanares, while his defense attorneys requested a sentence of 7.5 years. In a court filing, the defense said, according to an expert, Manzanares had brain abnormalities consistent with injuries caused by playing contact sports. In school, he'd played football, boxed, and wrestled. The expert said that at the time of the murder, Manzanares also had an undiagnosed and untreated bipolar disorder. These conditions were exacerbated by alcohol and the prescribed medicines he was taking, including testosterone and an amphetamine-like weight loss drug. The expert said this volatile combination led to an aberrant episode of violence. Prosecutors disputed the defense's medical claims and said Manzanares' actions were intentional and triggered by his wife telling him she wanted him to leave the cruise ship and that she wanted a divorce. The sentencing hearing for Kenneth Manzanares began in early June 2021. On the first day, the Manzanares daughters gave statements. In a previous court filing, Manzanares' attorney had written that the daughters hold their father responsible for their mother's death. Still, they understood his impairments significantly influenced the events surrounding her death. The attorney said that they had already lost one parent and did not want to lose them both. On June 3rd, U.S. District Court Judge Timothy Burgess sentenced Kenneth Manzanares to 30 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release for the second-degree murder of his wife, Christy. Acting U.S. Attorney Brian Wilson of the District of Alaska said this was not a random act of violence, but a chilling neglect for human life, for which he will serve 30 years in a federal prison where there is no parole ever. No excuse can justify the savagery committed by this man, who will now spend the next 3 decades behind bars, said Special Agent Robert Brett. As deputies led Kenneth Manzanares out of the courtroom, he briefly looked toward where 2 of his daughters sat. Sadly, this would not be the end of this sordid drama for his family. On Wednesday, July 14th at 6:59 a.m., a little over a month after being sentenced, guards found Kenneth Manzanares unresponsive in his cell at the Lemon Creek Correctional Center in Juneau. The medical staff at Lemon Creek worked on Manzanares until emergency responders arrived on the scene at 7:14 a.m. The responders declared him dead at 7:42 a.m. Manzanares was being held at Lemon Creek until he could be transferred to a federal prison. The Department of Corrections did not release Manzanares' cause of death. Information Officer Betsy Hawley said, Alaska DOC does not release cause of death due to confidentiality. The Alaska State Troopers and the State Medical Examiner's Office review all prisoner deaths in Alaska. The Corrections Department said they did not suspect foul play was involved in the death, and they also said it was not related to COVID-19. We will probably never know what happened between Kenneth and Christy Manzanares. Was the cruise meant to rekindle the flames of a stressed marriage? If so, placing an already frayed relationship and extended family in the environment of a cruise ship seems like a bad idea. I'm sure Kenneth Manzanares regretted the vacation. A cruise can be a great way to relax. You only need to unpack once and don't have to worry about getting yourself from one place to the next. Beware, though. Cruise ships are not magical places free of crime. Take your good judgment with you onto the ship. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you to my patrons for your support. Check out the show notes for more information on how you can support this podcast and unlock extra episodes by joining the Last Frontier Club. If you haven't already done it, be sure to join the Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier Facebook group and chat about the podcast. I'll see you soon for the next episode of Murder and Mystery in the Last Frontier.